You can't just try harder, but you can train and you exert your will towards the training, and then the training and in connection to God's grace and over a long period of time in relationship with the Lord leads to transformation. This model actually can break down. And like, I'm fairly familiar with most of the different models of salvation, the different veins of soteriology. And his approach is a soteriology of attachment. And so I'm like, okay, that's a different vein that I've experienced. And basically, to summarize what was triggering this is if our brains run on joy, like a gas, like cars run on gas, joy is the greatest fuel for our brain. And it's only in the context of a loving relationship in which joy is experienced that we have the fuel that drives transformation.
So you've been on kind of a tear recently. We've got a little stack of books here. Mm-hmm. And the focus that you've been kind of diving into is joy.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a particular vein that you've been reading in. Why don't you just kind of give us a little bit of the frame of the context of what you've just been nerding on lately with this topic?
Yeah. Joy has been a struggle for me on multiple levels, but of all the fruits of the Spirit, I would say patience has been easier for me to grow in and work on than joy. And partly, I would say I just excused that as I'm just a serious person. On the other part, I'm not super emotional, and joy seems very tied to emotions, and I don't know if I understand it or really feel like it's necessary. And just realizing that's a significant deficiency in my life.
Right.
And what triggered me going from, oh, that sounds nice, and maybe I can learn more about it, maybe I'll grow in it, but there's plenty of other things to work on. Going from that kind of thinking to, okay, I need to aggressively pursue this, came from one of the books in this stack that was the trigger I needed, was a book entitled Renovated. And the title and the author did not register much to me, Jim Wilder. But the subtitle was, what is it? God, Dallas Willard, Brain Science. Oh, God, Dallas Willard, and the Church that Transforms. So I'm like, okay.
A couple little keywords in there. Yeah.
Church and transforms. I should probably take more note of this. Well, recently, I want to say probably earlier this year, sometime in the summer, I was reading a biography of Dallas Willard, and it was just it made me really wish I knew him because I felt like it did really justice. I only know Dallas Willard through his content, and that felt like getting to know him as a person by one of his students. Well, in that book, it lists a number of his students that were like his doctoral students, and one of them I'd heard before, J.P. Moreland, and I started reading a lot of his stuff because he's kind of in the philosophy vein. And then this Jim Wilder gets mentioned, and not just connected to Dallas Willard, but also Dallas Willard's wife, Jane Willard, who's a psychologist and a counselor. And so I kind of have that connection. Well, in that Renovated, what he does is he takes these lectures that Dallas Willard did on this particular conference, and every other chapter works it through with a deeper level of neuroscience and psychology. And it's interesting how he respectfully works through those things, but also says, like, there's more here. And what I started seeing is the way Dallas Willard, the way he works through his models, the way he works through transformation is where the breakdown of the human being and where do you exert the energy that brings transformation? Like, what is it that makes, where is the point where you have to connect to God's grace that then leads to transformation? And Dallas Willard works it through, and this is probably not even fair, but how I keep understanding him and reading him is the appropriate places to use the will as a lever. So he's very emphatic about you can't will yourself into transformation. But he does talk through you need to exert your will in the context of things like discipline, exerting your will to come to the throne of grace. And so I might be oversimplifying that, but like that's how I've read him. It's like, okay, you can't just try harder, but you can train and you exert your will towards the training, and then the training and in connection to God's grace and over a long period of time in relationship with the Lord leads to transformation. And so I kind of already knew that about Dallas Willard. And so I'm reading through those chapters. I'm like, okay, I'm familiar with this content, growing. Okay, it's a little bit more. He says a little bit different here, but that's really good. And then in the next chapter, Jim Wilder would start approaching it and saying, and there's more. And it isn't just more, it's that this model actually can break down. And how is it that we are connected in to the Lord and experience his salvation? And like, I'm fairly familiar with most of the different models of salvation. The different veins of soteriology would be that word, the study of salvation. And his approach is a soteriology of attachment, or a soteriology of attachment to God and his love, his steadfast love. And so I'm like, okay, that's a different vein than I've experienced. And basically, to summarize what was triggering this is if our brains run on joy, like a gas, like cars run on gas, joy is the greatest fuel for our brain. And it's only in the context of a loving relationship in which joy is experienced that we have the fuel that drives transformation. And so, and I'm thinking through that kind of assertion, I'm like, okay, well, then what does that mean? And he starts talking about how the brain is wired, that joy begins fueling things at a subconscious level that is faster than conscious thought. And so more is being done subconsciously. Your transformation is actually beginning at a subconscious level. And where we choose to put our conscious thoughts and conscious efforts should be affecting the real fuel that's happening at a subconscious level. And joy is the key to all of that. And so that's when I kind of decided, like, okay, I can't just keep approaching this or kicking the can of this fruit of the Spirit. It's great that, I'm working on 8 out of the 9, but and there's more than this just being an emotion, because it bothered me how much would be discussed about joy as an emotion. And it's like, well, if it's subconscious and emotional, you can't control it, then how does any of this make sense? And that's what the journey I've been on, is learning how to make this make sense, where you put your conscious thought and how you develop certain things relationally, that because joy happens in relationship. And I've really underestimated that. And so how would I exert some energy in the relationship that builds something that is greater than conscious thought or faster than conscious thought? And there's even one or two other books on top of this that I've started to kind of learn. I'm learning how to integrate the knowledge. You Are What You Love by James Smith would be something I'd put in this stack. Learning how things get developed subconsciously and the joy that happens in relationship. I'm like, if I'm not consciously developing this, that then fuels me at a subconscious level, then all of my efforts will at best get me part of the way. But if I don't develop this, then I'm not going to be able to work through the kinds of transformation that happens, again, beyond my conscious thought. And that's what I want. I want to be driven at that level, that even subconsciously I'm being transformed by Jesus.
So incidentally, while we're recording this, we're actually in the middle of Advent. Mm-hmm. So this podcast episode will come out sometime, probably January, February. But the week that we're about to step into is joy.
Yep.
And I think you got to speak on joy tonight.
Yep. Tonight and Sunday.
And apparently from what you guys were saying, you didn't have much of a joyful night last night at home.
Not at all.
So I just want to, maybe give a little bit of backdrop. So like this, obviously this is something that's piqued your interest and you're diving into. But it existing just in your head is only so effective at bringing transformation. So like, tell Hannah, maybe give us some background on what you guys have just experienced. Yeah. So that you guys, get a little peek behind the curtain. So
this all sounds good in theory.
Yeah.
And then
you're tested.
Yes. So I would say just over the course of the last few days, one of our kids has had tonsil surgery. And she's older, so it's just harder on you when you're older. We experienced this just a few months ago with one of our other kids. He did pretty good through it. And she's, so in that, and then we had one of our kids test positive for the flu.
No
so
fun.
Let's just say we just haven't had a lot of sleep in the midst of all of this. As well as it's just the last week of school, which brings its own programs and Christmas parties and places to be.
Dress up
and those kinds of things, as well as I love Christmas. And so I'm not finished shopping yet. So I've got that on my mind. I've stayed up to get gifts wrapped, all of the things that come that even Advent helps us, or helps, just us. These are the things we're talking about. We're talking about slowing down in the midst of this season, to not get caught up in the busy. But we certainly are being tested, in that, or it's not just in our heads, but this is real.
Yeah.
So, and we're,
I mean, so the 4 weeks of Advent are hope, peace, joy, and love.
Yeah.
And we were saying before we started recording, so like hope and peace, both of those things have kind of, there's been catalytic sort of moments or triggers or traumatic events that have kind of forced those things to appear in your lives. But you're trying to get ahead of the game on joy.
I know.
A little bit, yes.
I know. I was telling him, and just because I get to hear a lot of these thoughts and we talk it through, and, we're so wired differently. I don't tend to do deep dives into things. It's just more, I don't know. You'd have to describe me to myself. I don't know. We're different in that way. We're going to say
You're
something.
You're a feeler.
Keep going, honey.
Yes. But as we've been just conversing about all of this, I made the comment like we've, the ways in which hope has been worked out and peace. And obviously those things are just themes in our life and marriage and home. And I'm like, joy, what would have to be a catalytic moment for joy to be that thing? And I think for myself, some of the things I could see kind of around this is just the holding of responsibility can kind of, like you can get unintentional, or you can
get overly serious.
There you go. Overly serious. You can be so intentional that just the joy or fun gets sucked out of everything. So that's
we both like we did a couple years ago. We did a facilitation and we worked through like our family core values, and family core values are going to come from what is already naturally wiring between the two of us, and where's the overlap. And some of those, I think we landed with 5, and like 3 of them were just super obvious. Like
they're not aspirational.
They're already there. This is how we raise our kids. This is what responsibility is at the top of the list. That like we're wired to take responsibility. And so if we're given a leadership responsibility, we're going to take that seriously, and we're going to execute to the best of our ability that responsibility for fruitfulness. And in our case, we've been given a lot of ministry responsibilities. And so we're responsible for people, we're responsible for their formation, we're responsible for staff, we're responsible for what we do has implications on people's pay. And so like we take those responsibilities seriously, and we both are wired that way. We went into family intentionally. We're having our kids, we're thinking through the lens of kids and the number of kids we have and how we raise the kids as discipleship. This is our discipleship. This is their discipleship. We're going to raise them to be effective in the kingdom of God, creating a culture. So we're super responsible.
And nothing that is outside of, like our home should reflect the responsibilities outside the home. So there's just that leaning in of high responsibility.
Yeah. And you can see for the most part, definitely our oldest is fully into that. But even the way all of our kids, it manifests differently, but all of them like follow suit. Israel, our son, he has a whole Minecraft village of Legos. It's his thing. Like, get Legos, get Minecraft Legos, build them, and like
into a village.
And he's like super responsible for this and takes good care of it and doesn't like things to get thrown. Like, he's not wild and crazy. So just like you see our daughters, like their dolls, like they take good care of them. They want to organize their clothing and stuff like that. So it's just that was like super easy. And a couple of them we realized if these like very obvious ones are going to be the only values that shape our life, we were going to be very serious people and never have fun. And so definitely the last one we put on there is like, we have hints of this, but this is aspirational. And it ended up being joy. And this is like 2 years ago. I wasn't on any journey for joy, but like,
you just recognize like your family culture, because you're shaped so much by all of the responsibility and things like that. Like joy kind of gets pushed down.
Yeah.
And so we need to make sure it's counterbalanced.
Right.
That we don't alleviate the responsibility, but we need to balance it with joy. And like our little catch line with it was, why so serious? Choose joy. And so I think we were talking through fun, and I'm like, I don't like fun as a core value.
Right.
I think it should happen. I think we should have fun, but a core value, fun.
So
like we need to be more spiritual than that.
This is something I learned recently. So I did one of the Big Five personality assessment, and I was looking through the different, there's basically 5 attributes that you're kind of on a percentage scale on, and the extroversion attribute, I hadn't put this. I hadn't connected this dot before, but people who are high in extroversion, they experience emotions just much more extreme. Like, so the happiness, joy, things like that, like they will feel that at a level that people who are more introverted just don't experience. Like people who are lower on that scale, like their range of emotion is much smaller. So it's not just that they don't like being around people. It's more than just a social thing.
Right.
It's like literally their capacity to feel is like suppressed compared to other people. And that was really insightful. Yeah. It's like you look around and you see people who are just excited about life. And usually they're more extroverted, and they're just like, they love, being around people. And it's because they actually have sort of like a greater capacity to feel either happy or feel sad.
I won't name the person, but there's a person we all have a long history of being connected to that I have described that person as an amplifier.
Yeah.
So if you're happy and that person's happy, boy, happiness is getting amplified and cranked to 10. If you're anxious, your anxiety is about to get cranked to 10.
Amplifier.
So there's people like that, the amplifier.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of an interesting, and I just think, around like how things like that shape culture, especially inside of families, like, if you're very introverted, like the scale of emotions that your kids are going to experience is going to be a much smaller thing, just even in relationship to you. It's like, I can count on probably, less than 10 fingers the number of times I've gotten like very emotional at home, but that's just sort of how I'm wired. And so I have some kids that are much more on the extreme end of that. And so it's like, it feels foreign to me. I'm like, why are you so dramatic? Like, why are you like, but now I'm realizing, well, they're actually feeling things at a deeper level than I am. And so I have to be, anyway,
that's interesting.
It's a little aside, something I'm learning as I'm, looking into this personality thing. But,
that's really interesting. That's why we say extra. They've got extroversion.
Extra. So, everything's extra.
I would say out of the both of us, I'm more extroverted, but I think that's just because I'm a mom, and you kind of have to grow into that.
We're both on the introversion scale, but
I feel like you were more extroverted in another life with me before kids. Yeah. So I don't know. We like had to swap. Right. So I know you're more introverted.
Yeah, I am, and the Lord is transforming me, and I'm realizing like I I would hide because of the discomfort of feeling emotions. Like that's
interesting.
So I remember being like, when I was much younger, I was a much more sensitive kid and like very emotional, but I was never like, I would say I was more shy than I was introverted.
Yeah.
I actually probably cared a lot about what other people thought about me. And so I had, some anxiety around those things. And so like, especially at moving to a new school, I'd get teased, made fun of because I was smart and stuff like that. And so I think I learned to kind of numb those painful emotions and and I think I became more introverted and over time, because I just learned like that was a safer play.
Yeah.
Emotionally is like, it doesn't have to, hurt my feelings whenever people are teasing me. And then I can, I found a way to kind of fit in socially.
Yeah.
And so I don't know,
that's a good,
it's just kind of a reflection back on my development. I was a more emotional, like young kid. And then by the time I became a teenager, my personality kind of honed in on just being kind of an even keeled person,
Yeah.
But it's pretty interesting.
That's a conversation I was having with my son this morning.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Israel's reminds me so much of myself.
Oh my gosh.
As
he's enough like me to be mine.
Yeah.
Not really though.
But
he's like a nerd
goodness,
like you.
But my goodness, he is a lot like you.
Yeah.
He has a huge heart, huge capacity to, just a lot in there. But man, pure hearted as can come. So I will say that. So, but like also so easy to, he doesn't require a lot. And so we have to really work at, when he's given those signals, like sometimes it's probably a little backlogged. We got to go back to understand the current things going on. So, but he's fun to parent.
Well, going on this journey,
makes me joyful.
I'm learning how better connected I can be to my children. Because one of the things about this particular subject that I wanted to resist or not believe, but I knew had a truth to it. So I needed to learn, okay, if this is true, then I need to not just resist it. I need to learn it. And that is that joy is relational. And I'm like, maybe just with God.
Right.
But the point that these authors are making is like, no, that's, yes, God, yes, but it's got to be with people. And I'm like, I don't think you're right about that. So let me, when something that I know has a hint of truth to it, I don't immediately just reject. It's like, if I'm going to believe this and live this, then I need to understand how you came to this conclusion and if I will align to that. And if you came through it biblically and that's in line with discipleship to Jesus, then I'm all in. Because I used to say, and I don't say it anymore because people didn't understand what I mean, and I'm learning deeper what I meant. I used to say I'm not very relational, and the reality is that's not true. It's just not true. All human beings are relational.
Right.
We just have different relational needs at different levels. And in learning this subject, learning about joy, is that like I do need the joy that comes in good relationships. I just don't need it with a lot of people.
Right.
Some people probably a little more on the extroversion side or just tuned in relationally like to get that sense from a lot of people.
Yep.
And I just don't care. I don't need that. I don't want that. And now I'm learning how to give that, but I don't need it. But I did realize, and as I was growing in this, because added to this pile, that Marcus Warner was one of the authors of these books. On top of this pile, I also listened to and have been reading through 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Marriage, 4 Habits of Raising Joy-Filled Kids, 4 Habits of Being a Joy-Filled Person. So, I mean, I'm piling on all this stuff to try to see how am I integrating all of this into my life, into every aspect of my life. And as I listened to and read through the 4 Habits of a Joy-Filled Marriage, I sent it to her like on Audible. I'm like, you need to listen to this. By the time she started listening to that one, I'm already listening to the kids, the Raising Joy-Filled Kids. Right. So I kind of feel bad for her. She does. I like she said, she's not wired the same way I am. Like I'm on this deep dive. So I just listened to this book in like a day and it's going to take you a week. And I'm like trying to talk this through with you. But
I'm like, I need somebody to process this with.
But I apologized to her. I said, what I am realizing is that I allow you to have a greatly disproportional impact. Our relationship has a great disproportional impact on me and my joy. When we're connected, the joy is super amplified. When we are not, the sadness gets super amplified.
Right.
And it's like, and I told her, I said, some of that I think is right because we're married and this is the most important relationship. And I think I'm holding you too responsible for me. And I got to grow in this. Because it's almost like I developed as an adult, like, okay, I don't need to need people. If I'm going to serve, I don't need anything from them. If I'm going to be a servant, I don't need things from them. And so I don't get necessarily currently fueled by a lot of relationships. I some of that personal wiring, some of that I think is just being a male. Like, okay, we relate and we build our relationship by experience, by work, by common interest. We don't, men in general, just because it's a stereotype doesn't mean it's relevant to every single person, but there are plenty of exceptions. And in this era, there's more exceptions to this. So it's probably eventually not going to be the rule, but men don't tend to relate emotionally first,
right?
Or sometimes at all. And so like, I just don't have a lot of friends. It just so happens that family relationships, we're coworkers in a lot of ways. So my closest friendships are generally like family. And so I haven't consciously thought through all of this and recognize a part of my humanity that could be atrophied. My transformation could be stalled by not working on this. And that's always becomes a motivator to me.
I was going to say that motivates you.
So like, okay, if
part I haven't developed yet.
If being relational, and there is a dark side to that, constantly working on yourself can sometimes, you can forget who you are when you're constantly working on who you're trying to become. But I recognize, okay, like I've got to understand this relationally, not so that I can feel more joyful, but so that I can understand how I'm being transformed into Christ and how I create an environment for people's transformation. And joy ended up becoming that. And like at like what I'm learning at its most basic form, and I'm careful to not assert too much. I'm listing my source material for everybody. That what I'm learning, and it's still a bit jumbled in my head because I'm in ingestion mode. I'm not in organizing mode yet.
Right.
But ingestion mode, that basically we're wired up to develop attachments. That's like from birth, it's attachment. And there are secure attachments that are based in love, or insecure attachments that are based in fear. And both of those, before this, we were talking the first 6 months of life. So the only thing is that, like in the first 6 months, is when you're hungry, when you're wet or dirty. Like that's like there's no communication. All you have is who you're connected with. And in an ideal development, children that are born in 2-parent homes where the attachment gets developed securely through love, where that infant feels the love that comes from the mother, and then by extension later on through the father. And that is purely based on touch, feel, and tone. Because no 6-month-old understands a single word.
Right.
So all they know is what they feel. Do they feel secure? Do they feel like they're connected? When I cry, is someone connecting with me? Those form attachments. Without those loving attachments, you develop insecure attachments based in fear. Am I going to be taken care of? So insecure attachments tend to make people leech because they're unsure if there's any stability. So it's in that loving attachment that when that attachment exists, what fuels the brain and builds the brain is the joy that comes in that loving attachment. It is the experience of that love, not the philosophy of that love, not the concept of that love, the feeling of that love. And we're talking the first 6 months, and then there's some kind of threshold between 6 months and 18 months. Most of these things they're not set in stone, but you've built a foundation by 18 months old. So before this, a child is communicating verbally. Most of these things are already built inside of them. The trajectory. And again, it's not set in stone. All those things can be changed, but it is the foundation for it. And when joy is experienced, it basically looks like you, if you're the baby, bring delight to the person you're attached to. They are happy to be with you. That feeling, that energy that you sense or feel is based on a definition of neuroscience. That's joy.
Right.
That's what joy feels like. Is that, and so now then you fast forward into like our adulthood is when I connect with my wife and I know that like her smile, that I'm in her presence, that feeling I get, that's joy. And that joy is the fuel of life. With our children, when, one of my children, I see them and they see me, that eye contact, my natural response is delight. I delight in them. My face shines on them. What they feel is joy, and it fuels their life more than anything else. And here's what I was learning about this. All of that happens in 1/6 of a second. The fastest our conscious brain can think is 1/5 of a second. So those things happen before you even know they're happening.
Wow.
And that's how, like, again, as babies, before any kind of language is exchanged, what is being formed in that child? They're looking at facial expressions. As their eyes get clearer, babies, they're only seeing about 12 inches. And it's meant to be the connection of mother,
right,
and child. They're learning facial expressions and the tone and the feel. So as a baby, we're learning like how to read the faces of our parents and our loved ones, and the tones, the facial expressions and the tones, and then the feeling you get from that. All of that is forming us as individuals, and you basically, like, if you want healthy relationships, or if you want joy, you have to have a healthy relationship. In the healthy relationship, there has to be a connection of delight in one another. And the fuel that generates that is joy. And that is having more of a transformative effect on us than nearly anything else.
Do you guys remember that video? I think it was in one of our leadership training sessions of the adult and the baby, like where they're doing this experiment where the adult is looking at the baby and it's just making happy faces and the baby's engaging with it. But then the adult will make their face go blank and non-responsive. And then the baby responds like gets upset and
starts doing things to try to get
that attention, trying to get the adult to react. I think this is sort of exactly what you're talking about. Is like before the baby can even talk, like it's trying to find that
delight.
Yeah, that delight.
And like those aren't like philosophical concepts.
Yeah.
That's actual neurology of the brain. That is the firings of the brain. And then something I'm learning that they mentioned briefly, and by no means am I a neuroscientist. So I'm loosely connected to all of this, but just learning the basic of it will do a lot. There's actual neurons in our brains called mirror neurons that interaction, like that adult and that baby or that child that's trying to connect, what the child is trying to do, we're trying to match our minds. Like what your brain is trying to do is to match the brain of another person. I think, like, a simple thing. Like, I know my mom's facial expressions. I know when she is connected. I know when she's getting on to me. I know when she's unhappy, because I've learned how to sync our brains. Same thing with Hannah now. Like, I know when she's unhappy. I know when she's perturbed. I don't always know who she's perturbed at or if I'm the guilty party.
Yep.
But it's and again, now that I'm learning this, I'm more aware of what's happening. That like as soon as I hear her tone, just the tone, boom, something already is changing in me. And what that is mirror neurons trying to sync up.
Right.
When they sync up in delight, there is a fuel of energy that it like you cannot match any other fuel.
There's something to that, just even in like going through something really difficult. But when you know you have somebody who's in there with you, and you know that you're on the same team with that person. Like, I'm even just thinking through like, like when our church burned, there was still a joy in the middle of that, knowing we were in it together and like, we're going to see this thing rebuilt. Or, in times of crisis, the crisis sucks. Like it's really a difficult experience to go through. But when you have somebody to walk alongside you with, in the middle of it, sometimes that is the fuel that you need that actually gets you through. Another thought kind of came to mind, and now it's
the phrase for that is called mutual mind.
Mutual mind.
When you sync up with someone, that's a mutual mind. And the idea, this is where I'm trying to grow in. The idea is that we can experience this with God. That like his face shines upon us, meaning like when he sees us, he delights, he has joy. And when we sync with God, when we share mutual mind with the Lord, the joy that gets in us, you got tons of scriptures for this, that the joy of the Lord is our strength. And
in his presence
is fullness of joy.
Yeah.
The literal translation of that phrase, in his presence, it's actually face. And it was hard for English translators to figure this out. But like in the light of God's face is fullness of joy. When
even the numbers blessing too.
Yeah. When we see the shining face of God, obviously that's a spiritual reality. We're not going to see it in the natural per se, unless you see it in the spirit-filled person who's communicating to you the joy of the Lord. But when you connect with the Lord and then you share mutual mind, his mind is transforming your mind. And it's happening faster than you're consciously thinking about it. That's the thing with me. It's like I'm consciously thinking about a lot of stuff that brings transformation. But can I be starting to rewire my subconscious mind that's running faster and better than my conscious mind to where transformation, I'm still going to be working consciously on it, but there's also an engine of subconscious transformation running, and the fuel for that is joy. And so I'm syncing up to God, receiving mutual mind, that in the moment, in real time, I'm thinking God's thoughts. And then able to then be a vessel of his in this world. And that kind of joy is what's going to fuel the transformation that I'm looking for, making me more like Christ. And that happens with, again, it's attachment. So am I connected and attached to God in his steadfast love? Am I convinced of that? First, you have to learn it, and then you have to believe it. And then in believing it, you got to live like it's true. But then you have to practice it consciously. But then practicing it consciously then builds a subconscious habit. Because there's also stuff I'm learning about gray matter in the brain that then through habits create white matter in the brain, and white matter in the brain run 200 times per second. So like the ability for wires, that's habits. And so that's where like, we're driving and like the automatic brake before we even recognize something else is happening in front of us, you're already pushing the brakes. That's habit that your brain is picking up on something in the environment running 200 times a second. Your conscious brain is running at 1/5 of a second. So can we habituate 200 times a second joy? Can I habituate that in such a way that my brain is running on joy faster than my conscious thought? Then that is building that kind of sub-engine of transformation that what I've had to get down to it is like, I can't avoid relationships through this. Like that was the hard reality that I had to really work through is, yes, I have to do this with the Lord, but it gets fueled through people too. And I have to be that vessel. If I'm going to be that vessel for people, be a source of joy. Because part of in Renovated, where you get down to is Dallas Willard's test of discipleship is to spontaneously love our enemies. How can you spontaneously love your enemies? If you don't have the joy of the Lord and then show that joy and delight to your enemy, then like really, are we really able to follow his commands? If that's like the ultimate test, that Jesus spontaneously loved his enemies, you will not be able to do that unless you have retrained your brain to run on joy.
Yeah. And if you can't even do that with your friends or your family, then how in the world would you ever do that with somebody that that hates you?
And that's been the practice with marriage, the practice with my kids. I'd say that my marriage and my kids have been the first environments of practice to get better at this. Even a conversation with my son today, because one of the things through this is probably worth exploring this for a little bit, is joy and the feeling of joy. This is me having to teach this tonight and Sunday, so I'm also thinking of like applicable, practical things to step into and how to think this through correctly. Yes, yes, it is a feeling, a natural feeling that happens in the delight of another person. That doesn't mean it is only an emotion that you feel. There is a measure where you can choose that, but I can get to that in a minute. Experiencing joy doesn't mean we should always just be happy,
right,
and pretend our way as if negative emotions don't exist. And that's something through a number of these books that talk through the 6 big negative emotions that we all have, and how we are supposed to, or called to is probably more Christian, to be an emotionally mature person. You have to learn how to experience those emotions, what they are for, and then how to build a pathway back to joy. So I've monologued quite a lot. You probably should jump in some of this.
Have you guys ever watched this series? And this is going to maybe feel like a tangent, but I feel like it's connected. Have y'all ever watched the series Alone?
Yes.
So
she has not. She has no interest in these kinds of things.
So you should watch at least one episode for context.
Inside Out. Does that qualify?
Yeah.
I feel like some of those things.
There's a whole lot to this.
A whole lot to this.
That's an interesting.
That's a little more
correlation.
Cartoon version.
Well, basically the idea of Alone is these group of survival experts get dropped off in a remote location, separated from all by themselves with a few items, right?
It's like 6 items or 4
I think they get 10 that they get to choose from or something. And they're dropped off and they have to survive and they have to outlast each other. Well, what I've found in watching the show that is so interesting is like you'll find people, there's basically certain needs that everybody, has to meet, right? You have to have water, you have to have food, you have to have shelter, you have to, but eventually what happens to a lot of the contestants is they get all those basic needs met. Like they're just, they land in a spot where there's abundant fishing, or there's, they've just got a string of good luck in one particular area. And as soon as sort of those like core human survival needs are met, the relational gap appears, and they start missing their family, or they start like remembering what it was like to just be with people. Aww. And, there's a prize at the end of this of like $500,000 or whatever, but they start to weigh I'm missing so much of life. Like one of the contestants had a wife who was pregnant, and he's like, I'm missing like the 3rd trimester of her pregnancy. Like $500,000. Who wants that? Like I want to go be with her. And so what it's really kind of brought to light for me is just like what we really value. Sometimes you don't know until you're deprived of it. Anyway, I love the show. It's my new favorite show. I've binged every single season in like a month or so. Because it's just fascinating to watch. I love all the survival stuff, and all that stuff's really interesting. But the psychology and like looking what people, how they weigh their risk and reward, and a lot of them get into a place where they're starving physically, and they're just trying to endure long enough to win the prize and different things. But it really stuck out to me, like how much people need those relationships in their life to feel like life has meaning and life has purpose, because they'll be stuck in these places for, almost, I think the record is a guy went like 100 days or something. But anyway, it's a fascinating show. And, I recommend it from just a pure interesting standpoint.
It's good.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch. It's funny because we were watching it at home, and the girls start getting into it too. And Eva, my youngest, is like, oh, I think he's going to tap out. I think he's going to tap, because basically at any point they can hit this button, and then a rescue team comes in and just gets them out of there. And so it's not like they're stuck there like without a choice. Like they actively have to choose every minute to stay.
Really easy to.
Yeah. And they literally push a button, and then, they tap out or whatever. And there's people that you just think, oh, there's no way they'll ever tap out. Like you're watching and they're just thriving and they're doing so good. And they just kind of hit a threshold and they're like, yeah, I'm done. I've done what I need to do here. I miss my family. I'm going home. And they just hit the button, and they don't even care about the money at that point. They just want to go home. And anyway, that's a little aside. But Inside Out. Yeah. What's your, how do you see that? I was
going to say, as he's talked to me about a lot of this stuff, I'm like, that movie just really paints the picture well. I mean, her name is Joy. And then you got all these other emotions and
sadness,
anger, and fear. Like, obviously, even the islands of what is strong, that's strong when she's the most joyful. Those are memories that she remembers that kind of fuel her life. And whenever those things start breaking down, like life starts breaking down. So it's, kind of depicts what you're talking about.
And you mentioned like the purpose of those, the healthy purpose of those negative emotions is to bring us back to joy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the plot of that movie. That is. Spoiler alert, is that she wants to feel joy all the time. And the joy emotion is like trying to take charge. But for her to really deal with what's going on, she needs to feel the sadness, experience it, and then let it bring her back to the core memory of remembering of being attached to her parents and all those things. Yeah.
The idea of the 6 negative emotions, the best verb for it is learning how to metabolize them. You have to feel them, and they're good. It's okay to feel them. You don't have to avoid them, and you certainly don't want to suppress them. But in feeling them, all of them can become toxic when they drive you away from relationship. But they're healthy if you make the conscious choice to return back to joy. But some people don't know how to do that. They never develop it. They don't learn. They're not in an environment that ever has taught them how to do it or experience it. And this is the thing there's probably a lot of different relationships with shame. Shame's one of those 6. We are in a culture that we want to see, people not imprisoned to shame, and not like shame is a chain that needs to be broken. And I'm not against maybe our intent behind that. But here's the reality: narcissists can't metabolize shame. And so all of us have a narcissist inside of us. We have to develop out of that. There's a bit of our flesh that none of us like that. So you have a choice when you feel that shame. There's toxic shame. You are a problem. You are a horrible person. And that's toxic shame. It's not good. But we do things that damage relationships. And shame is good. You should feel shame. You should feel bad for doing that thing that harmed another person, harmed the relationship.
Right.
But what do you do with that? And you get the choice. Do you run away from it? That's the inability to metabolize shame. You're not integrating, okay, what is this feeling supposed to do? I just don't like the feeling, so I need to suppress it. I need to remove myself from it. Some people just give into it, and that's the toxic side. I am a horrible person, and that's what none of our world wants to feel any of that, but our world is making narcissists right now.
Right.
Because there's very few groups of the world that is like how to have a healthy relationship with shame.
Right.
We feel shame.
What do you do?
Okay. What do you do with it? Go back to the relationship. It's not easy. It's not fun. It doesn't feel good in the moment. Yeah. But what it does is when the relationship gets repaired, Now you have a pathway back to joy so that when you feel it again, you know how to get back to joy, and joy gets restored in the relationship. I was just having a conversation with one of my children this morning about this. They needed to feel the consequences of their decisions, and then they feel shame rather strong.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to remind them, like, you're not a terrible person. Why do I feel like a terrible person then?
Mm-hmm.
That's not who you are. But yes, you made a poor decision here.
Yep.
But it's okay. I'm with you. I'm for you. I'm here. I'm proud of you still. No, that wasn't good behavior, but I'm proud of you still. You still bring me joy. That I will say that's because of practicing this. Mostly I'm like, get over it, kid.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he says.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it still comes out. I'm still learning that with our 5-year-olds, that it's like, you know what? Tough, kid.
Yeah.
Life's tough. But that's like, even I've mentioned the books, The 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Marriage, 4 Habits of Raising Joy-Filled Kids. I'm still even learning the models. I can't say that I've consciously put those specific practices in place. I will, but I'm still learning this. What it has made me do is aggressively practice maintaining the relationship to joy. I'm learning my own emotions in this as well, that like I kind of have underestimated how much I feel sadness because it's not an extreme emotion for me. And I will say that what preempts sadness is disappointment. And a lot of times, and this is where I started apologizing to her, like she has a disproportionate impact on me. It's because I probably have disproportionate expectations. And I don't even realize I have these expectations until they're not met. Mm-hmm. And then when they're not met, I'm not consciously thinking about unmet expectations. I'm feeling disappointment that then makes me feel sadness. And then because I'm sad, I'm automatically reacting to that sadness by sulking, by hiding, by basically turning inward to self. And so this is what's surprising me. All of that is happening at subconscious levels. And I have already habituated myself to sadness without even being able to say, I'm feeling sad. Like that's ridiculous. Like I should be more mature adult than that.
Right.
But I'm able to not feel it with very many other people. But it's because I have so much that this marriage relationship I depend on in that joy that I didn't really realize that's how much I put into this. Yes, I don't need a lot of relationships, but that means I need a lot from this relationship.
That's the introvert thing, is like, you don't need that from a lot of people, but you heavily invest in a few. It's like you have a few very core.
So when we're not connected and enjoy, and I feel sadness, I'm already having these habits that is making me, and then like it spirals. It spirals. And it's spiraling for minutes, hours, days. And I'm not even able to say, like, I'm just now able to just go, this is what sadness feels like.
Right.
Like I've detached myself from emotions so long, I can't even describe sadness. I'm feeling sad. And I need to just go say, I feel sad. It's not your fault. I have an unmet expectation. That's not your fault either. That's on me. But I am feeling sad. And I am practicing how to come back to the relationship when usually you'll just find me sulking.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that anymore. I might have some white matter around sadness and sulking. So I need to break that, and I need to develop new habits. Anger's the other one. Anger is the pain of joy being kept from you. So there's a way to translate joy into all these emotions, all 6, and just for people's own sake, I'll just list them real quick. Sadness is probably the first one. Anxiety, we feel anxiety, and anxiety and fear can be different. Fear is the natural response to something that scares you. Like that is a natural response. Anxiety is an ongoing feeling that fear will fuel if you allow it to. Because fear, I mean, if there's a scary dog and it's running to you, you're not like,
hopefully fear keeps you alive.
It's the fear. It's what happens after that settles that now you develop an anxiety about what could happen. So that's just fear exists, and you got to learn how to metabolize that too. But so sadness, anxiety, disgust, something that is completely removing my joy, and then shame, anger, and despair. And all of those, all 6 of those, sad, case anybody didn't pick up the way you SAD. All of those we'll all feel, and none of those are in and of themselves bad. What is important is, can we metabolize them? Can we feel them? And then upon feeling them, develop habits that bring you back to the relationship. And at some level, we all do this in different ways. I mean, like, I think of one of the easiest things about disgust is changing a diaper. Like, when you're changing a diaper, like, to me, that's disgusting. And I am repulsed by it. She got over the disgust a lot quicker than I did. I don't think I ever got over the disgust. But here's the deal. Like, your baby, if they can make eye contact with you, they're interpreting your face and the disgust you feel, that they are learning, oh, I am causing them disgust and they don't want to be with me. They don't even know that's what's happening. That's what their brain is. They're trying to make eye contact. And so practicing overcoming that is, I feel disgust and there's no way around it. I feel disgusted by this, but I love you. I love you, little baby, and you mean so much to me. And so I can change my facial expressions towards you, and I can overcome this disgust in order to express my love that keeps this attachment secure and that you still bring me joy. Well, it's like, what about all the other things in life that we potentially feel that with other people? That's disgusting. But you can be disgusted and then basically tell that person, you disgust me. And you might not ever say that out loud, but that's what your face is saying, and that's how their brain is interpreting it. And their brain is interpreting your face filled with disgust faster than they even know they saw your face. Yeah. That's how fast all this happens. And so my practice has been like, okay, what's my face communicating to people? How do I even, I'm still putting into practice, oh, I'm feeling these emotions. That doesn't make me a emotionally volatile person, doesn't make me controlled by my emotions. But just the inability to name emotions is giving them more control than they should have. So I'm feeling anger. Yeah, I feel angry. Why? Where did it come from? What pain is being caused by me? And a lot of the times it's like, yeah, that's stupid. Like, I'm angry about something stupid. Like, I felt it and I can't help but feel angry, but I now recognize it. And then I'm going to go back to joy. And over time, practicing all of this, practicing going back to joy, it's like the neurology of your brain will shift, that you become a more joyful person. Yeah. And I'm too early in this process to claim that I am a more joyful person.
You're more joy aware.
But I am far enough in the process that I am more joy aware. And now, as I'm developing with a group of people, namely my wife, there's at least, in the very least, when we both become aware, we have a common language to call it out. And now calling it out immediately can trigger, all right, my discipleship to Jesus means I cannot let this sadness, this shame, this anger, anxiety that I'm feeling, I can't excuse it away and I can't let it control me. I need help to come back to joy. Yeah. And I soon will be learning how to practice this with more friends and people around me. But I'm starting just with my marriage, my children, the people that mean the most to me in that close group. And then I'm just learning how to practice it more in my presence and in my face.
To me, this just seems like such a healthier approach to negative emotion than what we unintentionally communicate in charismatic circles sometimes. Yeah. Where it's just like, oh, you just got to have faith. You just got to overcome. You got to, march the Bible around your problem, or like you just stand on the word or whatever. And it's not that those things are wrong. Sure. And there's truth there, but like acknowledging like negative emotions and not immediately equating those to like doubt and fear and all of the things that we tend to see as enemies. I think this is a more balanced and healthy way of understanding like these things are painful to experience, but if we don't have a strategy on how to navigate back to relationship and navigate back to joy, then we're just going to avoid them in unhealthy ways.
One of the habits of raising joy-filled kids They break it down in A, B, C, D. A is attune to your children, attune to their emotion. It's not condoning it, but it is attuning to it to give them
Almost
a sense
call it
that they're
out.
seen.
Yeah.
The B is build bounce. And that's the whole idea, is helping the people around us build pathways back to joy so that you can bounce back from them, that you can feel shame, but still bounce back from it. You can feel, because you're never, if you ever get to the point where you never feel shame, you are a narcissist.
Yeah.
And you have no idea that any of your negative behavior is having an impact.
Wow.
That's narcissism.
Yeah.
So we all should feel shame. Hopefully we're getting more and more mature that we're feeling it. We're doing things less that cause shame, or we are able to metabolize shame quicker. We're going to feel sad. You're going to feel angry. You're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel all these things. But all of us can build bounce by bouncing back from those emotions. But you have to practice that. And you have to discipline yourself through habits. And I've asked, there's a lot of leaders in our ministry that I've asked to read through these rare leadership. And the rare, RARE, is the breakdown of those habits or disciplines to build some more, better leadership of people. The first R is remain relational. And that's when we're experiencing negative emotions, then we are to actually move toward the relationship instead of allow the negative emotion to drive us away from relationship. So in remaining relational, then the A is act like yourself. When you experience those negative emotions, you tend to not act like yourself. And it's stupid, but like the Snickers commercial, you're not you when you're angry. Well, first of all, stop making excuses for that. But it's somewhat true. You're not you. So first, knowing who you are, and this identity gets built faster at subconscious level, but that's probably another conversation, another podcast episode. And then R, oh man, I'm on the spot now. Act like yourself. What's the other R? Because the last one is endure hardship.
R is remember what.
Remember
what R is.
Remember what R stands for.
Yeah. Return to joy. Duh.
The thing he's on a journey of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So remain relational. Don't sacrifice the relationship when you experience a negative emotion. Act like yourself. Like recognize when you're not acting like yourself, and have the people around you able to hold you accountable. And then R, return back to joy. Build bounce. Come back to joy. And then if you can do those, you'll be able to endure hardship well. And at the end of the day, we have to look at this as what Jesus did. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame.
Yeah.
The relationship with his Father, our relationship with the Father, with him, is his joy.
Yeah.
And that made him endure hardship, made him endure suffering. And our endurance will get built if we're enduring it together, remaining relational in the midst of hardship. We'll endure hardship well. And I think that could be a major witness in this world that honestly is pretty weak.
Yeah.
But I think us getting strong, able to endure, getting tough, acting like a man, all that kind of stuff, is not just some, toxic stupidity. And I'm not one to loosely throw around toxic masculinity. Some of it's toxic, some of it's like we do need to endure hardship, but we don't do that by pretending we don't feel or just going scorched earth every time we get angry. It just means that we endure together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's give people a place to start if they want to jump in on this reading tear that you've been on. You've got a stack of books here. I doubt people can see the titles from the camera angle. Where would you suggest maybe they jump in? I mean, there's a book down there that says Joy Starts Here. Is that a good starting point?
That's like book 8.
Oh, okay.
For me.
Maybe not then.
I don't know. It goes pretty deep into joy. Honestly, for most people, I would imagine that you want to put this into practice first.
Right.
Me, I like understanding before I put anything to practice. So I'll go both routes. If you want to just put stuff into practice, I would say the books that aren't in this stack, because I have them digitally and in Audible, are the 4 Habits of Joy-Filled People, 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Marriage, and 4 Habits of Raising Joy-Filled Kids. And I would say, depending on anybody's like stage of life or greatest need, start with whatever one of those three, because there's a ton of overlap in all of it. And honestly, they're short books. They're really short. I listen at 1.5 speed, and I think all the books are right at 2.5 hours. Yeah, really short. So they're really short.
Cool.
So that's, if you want to put it into practice first, right? Connected with that, I'd put Rare Leadership and Rare Leadership in the Workplace, because that's putting this stuff into practice in your leadership. And so those 4 are the most practical. Then if you're starting to zoom out, the other half of the church, if you're looking at this in the context of a wider discipleship, that one's a good one. The other half of the church, pretty easy read. And then the others are way deeper. So if you want understanding and you want to really learn the subject first before you put it into practice, Renovated by Jim Wilder and Joy Starts Here would be how I'd start. I've got a few other books that's in my queue that I might recommend before all that, but I haven't got to them yet.
Gotcha.
But if you want the understanding first, Renovated was the most theological for me, that helped me. That was kind of my gateway into this. And I appreciated that more, because I've heard people say, like, you need to be more joyful. And like, I tried to read the other half of the church first, and honestly, it was very uninspiring. I was like, makes sense. Sounds good.
Right.
But it didn't.
You needed something to go a little deeper into the foundation.
It did not tip the scale for me. Once I read Renovated, I went back and read other half of the church, like, makes way more sense, way more inspiring.
Yeah.
And then now I'm actually right now reading Joy Starts Here. Gotcha. And it's pretty thorough and in depth. Yep. And I've got a few others that it's just right there in the queue. But since I haven't read them, I can't recommend them. But I have read these. So if you want to go the understanding route, depth of knowledge, the most theological is Renovated, the more kind of psychological, developing the psychology of joy is the Joy Starts Here. And then kind of work in reverse. Gotcha. That's how I went. But if you want to just start putting into practice right now, if your marriage is on edge or just more tense, 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Marriage.
Cool.
Start there. If you're internally struggling with all this stuff, 4 Habits of Joy-Filled People. And they make it fairly simple to put it into practice. Each of them, the 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Marriage, they put it as PLAN, PLAN, to make these a little more memorable. Play together, listen for emotion, appreciate daily, and nurture a rhythm. For the Raising Joy-Filled Kids, ABCD. For 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Person, CASA, because they talk about building a joy house in your brain, CASA. So like, easy, super simple, and you can start putting some of these things into practice immediately with minimal understanding. Awesome. I'm not wired that way. I don't want to practice something that I'm not convinced is fully true. Right. And if you want to, if I'd be a little LeVar Burton on this one, don't take my word for it. Read it yourself. That's how I'd start.
That's awesome. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. This one is super nerdy and fun in one particular vein. We've got tons of book recommendations here in this one for those of you who like getting those. So if this was a blessing to you, please let us know. Leave a comment, hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, which I imagine on average based on the stats, most of you haven't, hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate that. And we will see you on the next one.